COVID-19 has hit all businesses hard, but few have been as pummeled as the restaurant industry. And so, with great sadness, we're seeing the demise of our favorite restaurants. These are the restaurants that are going out of business due to the pandemic so far. Souplantation opened its first San Diego restaurant in 1978, back when all-you-can-eat salad bars and self-service buffets were all the rage. With a focus on home-style soups and fresh salads, the chain spread throughout California before expanding into the southern U.S. under the name Sweet Tomatoes. Even before most restaurants began closing down to contain the spread of COVID-19, Garden Fresh Corporation, which had owned the chain since 1983, was being proactive. On March 10th, CEO John Haywood temporarily shuttered all Souplantation and Sweet Tomato locations, promising to reopen as soon as possible. Unfortunately, the possibilities of an all-you-can-eat buffet staying alive in the age of COVID were close to nil, given federal recommendations against self-service operations.
While many restaurants have stayed open for takeout and delivery during the stay-at-home order, buffet-type businesses like San Diego-based Souplantation have remained closed.
Even once reopening was underway, customers were sure to be squeamish about mingling at the communal 50-foot salad bar. Meanwhile, the restaurant's signature concept couldn't be adapted to either table service or delivery. As Haywood confessed to Restaurant Business, revenues were plummeting as the company spent more than $1 million per week, even with their doors closed. With no reprieve on the horizon, Haywood admitted in May that the temporary closure would be permanent, resulting in the closure of 97 Souplantation and Sweet Tomatoes locations, leaving 4,400 workers unemployed. Equally renowned for its owners as well as its burgers, the Boston-based Wahlburgers franchise was started by chef Paul Wahlberg and his more famous siblings, Mark and Donnie Wahlberg, both of whom cut their teeth as boy band wonders before becoming actors and then restaurateurs. Since opening their first location in Massachusetts in 2011, the trios watched their chain grow. There are currently close to 40 locations throughout the U.S. as well as in Canada and Germany. But the pandemic is apparently causing the company to totally lose its foothold in one state. In 2016, the first Florida Wahlburgers opened in downtown Orlando, with a block party and cameo appearances by 2 out of the 3 Wahlberg brothers.
I think they did a world-class job. The restaurant is absolutely amazing. The event was fantastic. They pulled out all the stops.
A second location in the Orlando neighborhood of Waterford Lakes followed in 2017, with plans made to eventually grow the number of Florida outposts to 20. Burger business was booming until the coronavirus began to hit Florida hard. According to Wahlburgers' website, the majority of its restaurants throughout the country were either only partially open or temporarily closed during summer 2020. However, on June 25th, ClickOrlando.com reported that the franchisee for the downtown Wahlburgers would be closing up shop for good. Less than a month later, the Waterford Lakes restaurant also announced that it had served its final burger. With that 1-2 punch, the Sunshine State is now bereft of Wahlburgers. On the opposite end of the celebrity food chain from Wahlburgers is Villa Blanca. The Beverly Hills eatery is one of the glitziest jewels in the restaurant empire of multi-hyphenate actress and entrepreneur Lisa Vanderpump and her husband Ken Todd. The couple inaugurated Villa Blanca in 2009, a year before Vanderpump was catapulted into the reality star firmament as an original cast member of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. An unofficial Real Housewives clubhouse, Villa Blanca was popular with celebrity gawkers and fans of Lisa's spin-off show Vanderpump Rules. At least it was until March 2020, when Vanderpump temporarily closed all of her restaurants. When the decision was made to permanently shutter Villa Blanca, the celebrity news machine went into overdrive. Among the most contagious gossip was the rumor that the restaurant was in financial straits following a discrimination lawsuit. In a Daily Mail interview, the star dissed the, quote, many untrue articles claiming the real reason for closing was a lethal combination of a rent hike paired with the pandemic. Vanderpump reportedly hopes to resurrect Villa Blanca in the future, but for now she's focused on reopening her other West Hollywood restaurants, where she intends to transfer many Villa Blanca employees. In the meantime, she's making the best of home quarantine by filming a very silly cooking show with her daughter Pandora. With pioneering chef Paul Prudhomme's death in 2015, many feared for the future of his legendary New Orleans restaurant, K. Paul's Louisiana Kitchen. He has been noted as one of the United States' very first celebrity chefs.
Welcome. I'm glad you decided to spend some time with me in my pots and pans. I'd like to talk to you about Louisiana cooking.
When Prudhomme and his wife Kay opened their French Quarter restaurant in 1979, Few imagined that their unpretentious neighborhood establishment would be ground zero of a major Cajun and Creole food revolution. As food journalist Ian McNulty told NPR, in a city famous for restaurants, K. Paul's really stood out, taking the food of the Louisiana countryside and making it this worldwide obsession. According to McNulty, K. Paul's was all set to continue operations after Prudhomme's death, with Prudhomme's niece running the restaurant and her husband taking over chef duties. The unexpected pandemic and the resulting drop in tourism left them unable to sustain that goal. On July 13th, K. Paul's demise was breaking news, and it broke many hearts. Fans may take some comfort in the legion of Prudhomme cookbooks and TV series that survive, as well as his namesake, Creole Cajun seasonings. America's other first-ever super chef, Wolfgang Puck, has also fallen on hard times during the pandemic, with the recent shutterings of The Source and 560. This double whammy is all the more shocking considering the size and heft of Puck's business empire. With 110 fine dining and casual restaurants, in addition to catering and licensing deals, his total annual revenues were estimated to be around $650 million in 2018. 560 opened in 2009 at the top of Dallas's iconic Reunion Tower, the restaurant's name having referred to its height of 560 feet above ground level. Dining on dumplings and lacquered Chinese duckling with the spectacular view quickly became a must-see Dallas dining destination. But that stretch of success sadly came to an end in late April with the news that the COVID-19 pandemic would be permanently shuttering the restaurant. In mid-May, Puck's DC-based The Source followed suit after 13 years in business. The Asian fusion restaurant had marked Puck's initial foray into the nation's capital. A DC-powered dining hotspot, The Source spearheaded a changing of the culinary guard, weaning locals off steakhouses and onto the izakaya bar grub that made The Source a perennial favorite. The closings have taken their toll on Puck, who confessed to The Hollywood Reporter that he'd been stress-eating a lot of chocolate, admitting, "I think I've gained 10 pounds these past few weeks." David Chang is another celebrity restaurateur who suffered a double dose of coronavirus closures. In the aughts, Chang's Momofuku restaurant group caused a small tsunami in the restaurant industry, with Chang's disarming mix of lo-fi and high-end elements blurring the lines between fine dining and fast casual. And yet, as Eater noted in its article about the closures, despite a, quote, billionaire investor, an international footprint, and the name recognition of one of the country's most celebrated chefs of the past 2 decades, Momofuku hasn't been immune to the onslaught of COVID-19.
And it's not just Momofuku. There's so many other businesses that need help. It's every single restaurant and small business in the service sector.
On May 13th, the group, which owns 16 restaurants and 2 multi-city chains, announced the closure of Momofuku Nishi in NYC and Momofuku CCDC in Washington, D.C. After the closures, Chang confessed during a tearful episode of his podcast, "I'm still at war with this decision. It's not ever going to sit right with me, and at the same time, I know exactly why we need to do it. From a cerebral level, I definitely understand it. From an emotional level, it's never quit, ever." Upon opening its Greenwich Village doors in 1984, Gotham Bar and Grill became the template for a new kind of fine American dining, in which French elegance collided with a new American cuisine celebrating seasonal, local ingredients. A radical concept at the time. Under the helm of cutting-edge chef Alfred Portali, the restaurant racked up rave reviews and multiple Michelin stars. In 2019, Portali stepped down from his position as the chef at Gotham, paving the way for a new era for the storied restaurant. But Gotham barely had time to find a new groove when COVID-19 hit New York City. As restaurants began temporarily shutting down, Gotham announced that it would be serving its last supper on March 14th. Edward McCrady's Tavern first opened in 1778, where it was the hub of a post-revolutionary social life in downtown Charleston. Illustrious early customers included the likes of George Washington. Centuries later, in 1993, McCrady's reopened as a restaurant, which went through multiple phases and chefs, until 2006, when along came Sean Brock. Brock transformed McCrady's kitchen into a laboratory of molecular gastronomy, where he carried out unorthodox experiments using local line-caught catfish, pasture-raised pork, and herbs and edible flowers raised on the roof. In doing so, Brock single-handedly put Charleston on the culinary map while leading a hardcore revival of Southern cooking known as lardcore. Although McCrady survived Brock's departure to Nashville in 2018, COVID-19 brought the establishment's long life to a definitive end in late April. In 1933, an Austin bootlegger, country singer, and yodeler named Kenneth Threadgill celebrated the end of Prohibition by standing in line all night to be the first person in the country to get a beer license. He then transformed the Gulf gas station he'd acquired into an after-hours bar for musicians. Threadgill's was on its way to becoming a local institution by the mid-1960s when a University of Texas student by the name of Janis Joplin started playing blues on her auto harp on folk nights. Threadgill's had fallen on hard times by 1981 when Eddie Wilson scooped it up. A music promoter with hippie leanings, Wilson transformed the iconic Austin building into a music venue and restaurant featuring his own mother's Southern-style comfort food. In recent times, however, business had soured, with Austinite foodies increasingly forsaking the restaurant's chicken fried steak and meatloaf for the more innovative-seeming fusion restaurants elsewhere in town. When the pandemic struck, Wilson decided it was time to retire. In mid-April, he put Threadgill's up for sale and its collection of musical memorabilia up for auction. It was a bittersweet goodbye to an Austin institution. The 76-year-old Wilson confessed to the Austin American-Statesman, "I've been in a lot of roll-around and tumbling brawls, but I've never been this old. This whole pandemic has been like a kick in the gut that bent me over." In 83 years of business, Louis' restaurant survived its share of near disasters.
Survived World War II. There was a fire in '49 that destroyed our restaurant. They rebuilt. The Sudor Baths fire almost destroyed our restaurant.
Perched upon rugged cliffs overlooking the Pacific, the San Francisco Diner was established in 1937 by Greek immigrants Louis and Helen Hontalis, who rented a small but scenic piece of land on which they opened a cafe. With passing years, Louis became a popular getaway with a view, where customers could enjoy burgers while occasionally catching a sight of passing whales and dolphins. In 1973, the National Park Service acquired the land, and Louis became part of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. Over the decades, Louis narrowly escaped raging fires, revocations of its concession contract, and other threats of outright obliteration. Yet, on July 13th, this San Francisco institution finally closed its doors, stating on Facebook that waiting out the pandemic was, quote, financially unreasonable. Co-owner Tom Hontalis, grandson of Louis and Helen, confessed to NBC that breaking the news to his staff was heartbreaking, saying, "We couldn't even hug our staff." Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more mashed videos about your favorite restaurants are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.